This is the Conjuring house, the house where the events that the movie was based upon happened in real life. We spent the night investigating inside of the house and had a couple of terrifying experiences. I'm going to post a whole series of TikToks about this house, so follow me if you don't to see them.
The possession of Maurice Thuriot is sure to keep you up at night. Now, we've all seen the movie The Conjuring, but in the movie The Nun, there's a character named Maurice. Did you know that he's based on a real person? Ed and Lorraine Warren, the real-life paranormal investigators from the films The Conjuring, handled this case back in the 80s, and they wrote a book about it called Satan's Harvest. It's a pretty cool title. This is Maurice and his wife. He came from a childhood of abuse and a background of criminal activity, but in the 80s, his dad killed his mother and then committed suicide. A couple of years later, strange things started to happen to Maurice. He started to bleed from his eyes, he would develop burns on his body, and marks in the shape of crosses. He lived with his wife in a creepy farmhouse in Maine, and this is where it gets eerie. A couple reporters from a very trustable newspaper, the Boston Herald, you can see them mentioned right here, actually came out and witnessed some of Maurice's conditions. And not knowing where to go, they contacted the Warrens to come in, and this is where the story goes absolutely bananas. Follow me for part 2. One of the most shocking cases of real-life possession that I've ever heard is the case of this guy. His name's Maurice. He lived with his wife in a small farmhouse in Maine, and his dad actually killed his mom and then committed suicide a couple years before the possession. Eventually, they called in Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous demonologists and ghost hunters, who offered their help, and they determined that Maurice was supposedly inhabited by Satan himself, which is what led to his exorcism. Apparently, this took days. It was recorded on video. His eyes rolled back into his head. He started bleeding from his eyeballs, and he even developed scratches and burning on his face while newspaper reporters and the Warrens were just watching him. Apparently, at the end of the day, the Warrens believed that Maurice was cured of the demon and he went on living his life. But this story ends with mystery, because Maurice ended up trying to kill his wife in the same way that his dad killed his mom, and then he took his own life. That's one of the craziest Ed and Lorraine Warren case files that I know, and that's the basis of the book Satan's Harvest, which is a very good read. And if you want to watch me ghost hunt on YouTube, go look up the Paranormal Files. This is the true story of Annabelle the doll. You've probably seen the Conjuring movies and seen Annabelle the doll, the possessed doll that's haunted by a demon, but did you know that it's based on a true story? Back in the 70s, the original Annabelle doll, pictured here, a Raggedy Ann doll, was given to a nursing student by her mother. The student placed the doll around her apartment as a decoration, and it seemed to be going well for a while, until she noticed the weird things happening. At the beginning, the activity wasn't negative. Annabelle would just move around by herself, and notes would appear in the apartment with weird things written on them like, "Help me." But eventually, the woman who owned Annabelle started to get a little bit suspicious, so she had a medium come in and do a seance. And that's when the doll got its name. The medium supposedly told this nursing student that Annabelle was the spirit of a girl who had died on the grounds on which the apartment complex she lived in was now built. Also, I forgot to add this, they had found blood on Annabelle at one point. But they had no idea that the spirit inside of Annabelle was not a little girl, and people started to get attacked. I'll be posting part 2 very soon if you want to hear it. This is a true story of Annabelle the doll. Annabelle, after being given to a nursing student as a gift, was determined to be haunted by the spirit of a little girl. But then people started getting attacked. A friend of the owner actually woke up one night in the apartment and saw Annabelle standing over him, strangling him. But he kind of brushed it off and thought it was just a nightmare. And a couple days later, he was actually over at the apartment again, and he and the nursing student heard a noise in the other room. When he entered the room, he noticed that Annabelle was in a different position than they had left her. And he felt a pain on his chest. He had been scratched up and down and was bleeding through his shirt. And at that point, they realized that it wasn't a little girl inside of Annabelle, and they went to the church, who then referred them to Ed and Lorraine Warren. And the Warrens came in, they did a house blessing, and they removed Annabelle from the home. And now Annabelle is famous, and she's in this display case inside of the Warrens Occult Museum with a sign on it that says, "Warning, positively do not touch." Also, I meant to say positively. If you want to hear more spooky stories, give my account a follow because we're diving deep.